15 tips for Madden 22 franchise mode. Let's get into it. All right, so when you start a franchise, the first thing you need to figure out is, do you want to do online or offline? What are the differences? Well, playing on the cloud via online, you do have access to start a season pretty much at any point of the current NFL season with all the draft picks, with any trades implemented with the current rosters. And that's an advantage to some people. Maybe you're going to start and pick up the game at week 8 of the NFL season. Well, you could start your franchise right on week 8 with the current statistics, with the current wins, losses, trades, current players, all that good stuff. You can't get that with offline mode. You'll have to use, as you see, a preseason roster or use an active roster that you loaded in. The only good thing about online is that you can do next gen transfer, so you can transfer over your current save files to this. Now, if you want to play offline, the benefits of that is that you can control all 32 players without having to switch coaches and all those types of things. The benefit is that you don't have to worry about EA servers. If you're playing offline, you don't have to worry about if the servers crash, you can still play. If you're on online and the server crashes, well, then you can't access your game file through the cloud. So just something that you need to be aware of. I personally like to play online, but I see the benefit of also playing offline if you're not going to plan on starting midway through the season and you want real life NFL rosters. All right, tip number 2 is, after you choose your team, is what kind of role do you want to play within your franchise? So you can play as a player, where you have a solo experience and you only control that player. You can play as a coach, or you can play as an owner. Now, pretty much everybody is going to play as an owner. The owner gives you the most benefits. You can control the financials of the team. You can control everything that a coach can control. And if you just want to lock onto a player and just play a certain player, you could do that at the start of every game. But that's totally up to you. But I think owner is the way to go here, unless you just want to do a player control experience. Maybe you want to start as Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Wilson, someone like that, and just play their entire career, since there's no creative player. Those are really your only 2 options, in my opinion. I don't really see a reason of playing coach, and unless you just like to do the whole getting fired thing. But I'll leave that to you. I think owner and player are really your only 2 options, and I think owner is your best. All right, tip number 3 is your gameplay settings. These are absolutely crucial to having a good NFL-like experience in your franchise, and you can change these here in the league settings, or if you decide to change something later, you can go in your settings of your franchise mode. So you can change things like skill level. Obviously, all Madden is as high as you can play. Rookie is as easiest game mode that they currently have. You can switch between simulation, competitive, or arcade. Simulation is going to give you the most realistic NFL experience. Arcade is going to give you the least. Then you have everything down here, from having instant starters to trade deadlines. How much AI influence do you want in your game? Do you want coaching fire on? Do you want relocation settings on? I normally turn those off just because I feel like teams relocate way too quickly if you leave it on. Do you want injuries on and off? There are tons of things that you can customize here, and I think that you need to go through this with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that you have everything set up the way that you currently want. One of the big things is obviously user team help, manage practice reps. That's a big thing. Do you want that auto controlled? Do you want that on manual? Do you want pop-ups on? I can't stand pop-ups. I'm playing Madden franchise for 15 years. I don't need pop-ups. Do you want fill roster on? Do you want the CPU to constantly go in, and if you don't meet the minimum requirement at a certain position, they'll fill that automatically for you? I usually turn that off as well. But there are tons of things on here to choose from. Obviously, one of the biggest ones is quarter length. I like mine on 12, and I like to have the accelerated clock on with minimum on 20 or 15, depending on how much time you have for an entire game. But that's kind of it. Make sure that you change these settings before you obviously start your game, or you get too deep in your franchise, because some things might happen that you might not like. Tip number 4, this is exclusive to Madden 22 only, and this is the skill trees for player personnel: your head coach, offensive coach, defensive coach, and your personnel guy. So you're going to go to manage staff. You're going to click on franchise staff. From here, you're going to go to view talent tree. Doesn't matter which coach you decide to choose up, because you can switch from head coach, offensive, defensive coordinator, or your player personnel. And from here, you'll get staff points. You'll gain staff points throughout the course of the season by meeting goals, winning games, breaking records, having a player get voted in as a Pro Bowl, or win a league award. Anything like that is going to give you staff points that you can spend on your coach from things like decreasing multi-week injury recovery time so that your players recover quickly, to things like talent points for your other offensive and defensive coordinators actually costing less. So there's a lot of different things in these talent trees. Now, if you want me to make a video on the best talent trees, the best skills to do, let me know down in the comments below and I'll make that for you guys. But you do need to make sure that you go through here and you look at these and spend those staff points in the most appropriate places so that you have the best chance for development and success in your franchise. Another big thing that you need to do, this is tip number 5, is actually get your depth chart, specifically those specialist roles, in order. Of course, things like quarterback, your running back, your wide receivers, those are obviously going to be no-brainers. You know, you're obviously going to put usually your best guy at the top. Now, if you're doing a simulation, you probably want to put your best wide receiver, just a little tip here, in the 3rd spot at the slot wide receiver. For whatever reason, in Madden simulation, slot wide receivers always get more receptions and yards than the starters. Don't ask me why, that's a Madden problem. But we're gonna go over here to the specialist positions, and these are things like slot corner, slot wide receiver, your rushing ends, your rushing defensive tackles. All these things need to be set appropriately. So like DJ Moore, I don't really want to use him in the slot. Maybe I want to use Terrence Marshall, the rookie out of LSU, in the slot. I want to keep DJ Moore on the outsides of every formation. I don't want him moving inside, but maybe you do. Maybe you think DJ Moore is a good slot guy. Well, then this would allow DJ Moore, when the opportunity is present, to be that slot guy. And then whoever is 3rd back in the wide receiver depth chart, if we look at this, is going to move to the outside where he originally was. So in this case, if we look at this, that would be Terrence Marshall. So now that we've got DJ Moore in the slot, he is going to move to the slot, which will push Terrence Marshall to be that outside wide receiver. And another important one to remember is that your sub linebacker, pretty much whatever linebacker you want in the game the majority of the time on the field at all times, this is who you're going to want to put in at number 1 here. For us, for the Panthers, I got Shaq Thompson. That's who I want in. So if you do have a situation where you have more DBs than linebackers, Shaq is going to stay on the field pretty much the entire time. Tip number 6 is position swapping to help your team be better. Or if you're interested in doing trades, then sometimes switching positions can help out with trades. First, let's talk about your depth chart. So let's look at Cameron Irving here. He's a 69 overall left tackle. Well, let's say I wanted to, 69 overall is really not that good for a left tackle. I want to move him to, let's say, left guard. And you will see he will end up being a 71 because he's moving from left tackle to left guard. And if we start him, that will actually be better than having Pat F-line at left guard. Really not sure how to say his last name, but you can do that for a multitude of different players and positions. Safety to corner, corner to safety, linebacker to D-end to defensive tackle. You can do tight ends to fullbacks. The list goes on and on of all your different things you can do. So really at the start of your franchise, look at your team, see where your team's weak points are, see if you have extra depth somewhere, and maybe you can move them to a position that will actually help your team in the long run. Now you can do these same things for trades. So the way the trading system works in Madden is that each position is valued a little bit more than, say, another position. Obviously, quarterback is one of the most valued players or positions in the entire league, of course, if not the most important, right? And a punter really isn't. So if you can't get a trade to go through because of that, you can always move a player to a least valuable position or a more valuable position, depending on exactly what you need to make a trade go through. Now, sometimes this can be a little cheesy, but I did want to throw that out there in case you're trying to replicate a real life trade, because we all know that real life trades, for whatever reason, can't be replicated in Madden because of the way Madden system works. Or if you're just trying to trade for a player that you think you should be able to get, you could just move them like a punter. Maybe you're trying to get Deshaun Watson and you cannot get that trade to work for nothing. Just move him to punter and you probably could trade him for peanuts and you could get him over. But again, don't use and abuse that. It is kind of a cheese system, but I just wanted to throw that out there because that might help you at some point in your franchise. All right, tip number 7 is gameplay sliders. To me, this is probably the most important thing that you can do to make your franchise better. I'm a real big sliders guy, and if you want information on exactly what your sliders should look like, I'll leave a link down in my description. I've already made a video on this, and if you want to stay up to date on these sliders, because I fine-tune them constantly so that they can replicate a real NFL experience, make sure to subscribe down below so that you never miss one of those videos. But changing your league sliders is critical, because if you play on All Madden, especially if you play on All Madden, sometimes the computer, the AI, will try to cheat you out of a win or some type of play. And by lowering or increasing these, this will give you a more realistic NFL experience, which will in turn make the game more fun for you. On that same note, tip number 8 is your XP sliders. So sliders work all the same way, right? But with these XP sliders, this determines how much XP is given to a position. So if you look at quarterbacks, normally it's set on 100, now it's only at 85. So a quarterback will now only get 85% of the normal XP that it would have gotten through a week when compared to the base settings that Madden 22 comes with. Now you might say, why is this important? Well, because you don't want all your players to develop at the same rate. Not every quarterback should be the next Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, and not every running back should be the next Derrick Henry, and not every tight end should be Travis Kelce, right? There should be some busts. There should be some players that don't develop as quickly as others. And having these sliders set on what I currently have, and I've already made a video on this, so if you want to check that out, I'll also leave a link down in the description again. Another reason to stay sub to the channel so that I can help you guys. But it makes the gameplay and the franchise more realistic, because you don't want to end up 15 years into your franchise or 10 plus years in your franchise and every team has a 90 plus quarterback. Every team has 2 or 3 all-star wide receivers. You just don't want that. These will help prevent that. All right, tip number 9 is your weekly strategy and the new fatigue system that is exclusive to Madden 22. Now, there are a lot of bugs with this new fatigue system. Madden has currently fixed the user bugs on our end to where players will actually get back into the game. But unfortunately, the CPU still has some issues. But I just kind of want to go over a brief summary of exactly what you need to do with your weekly strategy. So you can, from here, determine what you want your gameplay focus to be on. So let's say the Panthers are going up against the Washington football team, and currently our defensive gameplay and focus is defend the medium pass. If we look over to the right, we'll see the football team offense. Their best thing is average passing yards, meaning they pass the ball better than they run the ball, right? And if we look here, it looks like the passer rating for Ryan Fitzpatrick is 85.9 at short passing. So in this case, I think it's better if we try to defend the short pass, or right here. So by defending the short pass, we will prevent Ryan Fitzpatrick from doing what he does best. Another big thing is the fatigue system within Madden. You want to make sure that you monitor this so that your players don't get too tired before the end of the season. And if they do get too tired, then they won't be on the field. You can't play them. So one of the things that you need to monitor is their overall fatigue. You see here, because the way I've been kind of doing it in this franchise, we're at 97% fatigue in week like 10 or 11. That's actually really, really good. But let's just say, for instance, let's use Brian Burns, for example, the left end for the Carolina Panthers. Let's say his fatigue has gotten really, really low. Well, I can do a multitude of things. I can put backups in, which means Haynes Sr. and Christian Miller will now practice and give Brian Burns a day off. Or I could do half pads, but if you do half pads, that affects the entire team. I can just affect individual positions depending on how tired someone is. In this case, I think everyone is good. I want to get everyone the full amount of XP, because if you do half pads, they don't get the same amount of XP if they did full pads. So I'm gonna go to half, and that should prevent a lot of my players from getting too fatigued and them being ready on game day. Now you have to do this for the offense and defense, and it's something that you need to monitor at all times so that your players do not get subbed out of the game and not come back in. Something very important that you need to do. On that same note, tip number 10 is auto sub sliders. So this goes hand in hand with the fatigue system. You go to get to your auto sub sliders, you're gonna go to manage staff, and you're gonna click on auto subs. From here, you can control when players get subbed into the game and out of the game. This is very, very important, especially now with Madden and that fatigue system that I just mentioned. Now, I've already made a video on auto sub sliders, so you're all set. I'll leave a link down in the description below. You got it, and you can check that out. One of the things that you need to remember is that auto sub sliders control when a player is subbed out of the game based on the fatigue and when they're subbed in. I do a good job of explaining it, at least I think so, in the video down in the bottom of the description. So go check that out. You'll make sure that you want to have these set up for offense and defense so that your players rotate in and out and you get some of those backups in and they develop kind of like a real team would in the NFL. Tip number 11, since we're talking about developing players, is make sure you focus the right players in your weekly game plan. So what we were talking about with the fatigue system, you have a weekly game plan for offense and defense. At the end of this, you have a team profile, which you can choose 3 players to focus. Now you can get up to 6 if you make sure you have the right skill trees unlocked. We talked about that already. And you can actually have 6 players that you can focus that will get extra XP for every practice that you do. Now, one of my things that I do is I try to choose the youngest player, and I will go all the way down, because usually this is sorted by age, which is not really at this point in time. It's sorted by, overall. And I will start down at the bottom and I'll look, all right, who has a high overall but is very, very young? Those are the players I want to focus on, especially if you only have 3, because I'm going to get the most bang for my buck, meaning that I will get the most XP, because a normal development trait does not gain and is the same amount of XP as a star or a superstar or an X Factor player. So in this case, I chose JC Horn, I chose Tommy Tremble, and I chose Chuba Hubbard. Now, JC Horn has a star development trait. Chuba Hubbard has a normal one. He's really not what I would normally go with, but he is a 72 overall. He's 22 years of age, and I use him a lot behind Christian McCaffrey. And then Tommy Tremble, we don't know what his development trait is quite yet, but the Panthers are kind of short at tight end, so I wanted to kind of develop a tight end early on. Another person that I probably could use is, if I go down here, is probably your Tier Gross Matos. He's a 75 overall. He has a star development trait, and he's only 23. But again, that's up to you to determine, but make sure that you go in here and you choose these for yourself, because usually at the start of the franchise, the computer will already have 3 chosen for you, and they're usually not good players. So make sure that you have the right players in, so you develop good players for your franchise. All right, tip number 12, which I think makes franchise so much more enjoyable, is custom draft lobbies. So normally without week 3 or 4, I can't really remember which one it is, you're given the option to start scouting college players. Now, there is going to be a new scouting update implemented in Madden 22. Make sure to subscribe for that, because I will have plenty of videos to break down that, so that it makes scouting players a little bit easier for you. But if you click on scouting players at that time, it will give you an option to choose a custom lobby or an auto-generated one. Now, if you do an auto-generated lobby, it'll be just random players that Madden chooses. But if you use a custom lobby or draft lobby, you can look at the Madden shares, so files that the Madden community has uploaded, and you usually can upload a Madden draft lobby that has all the upcoming draftees. All right, tip number 13 is making sure that you draft the right players. One of the best ways of actually knowing that you got a good player is looking at their first 3 traits that are shown whenever you scout them. So let's look at Kerry Sharp here. Usually if they have a B+ in all 3 categories, they're usually a surefire good pick. So if we look at him, quarterback, A+ throw power, really good. A- throw accuracy short, really good. And an A- throw accuracy deep. Now, if I was to look at Kerry Sharp, I would almost be guaranteed that he would be a solid first-round draft pick, along with Peter Judge, B+, B+, B+. Usually if you have a B- or above in all 3 of the first categories shown, then usually you're going to have a really good draft pick. And I don't mean really good by all of them going to be 80 overall, but meaning that you're not going to have too many busts with that. Now, if we actually look at this, let's edit these players just to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So you can actually look at these. And if we look at Peter Judge and Kerry Sharp, 76, 77 overall. And those are probably the 2 best players well, not the 2 best, but they're top 10 best picks in the draft, with that 77 and 76 overall. If we look at someone like Gerald Gilmore, we'll show you, for an example, his first 3 development traits, so that you can just see, for example, what I'm exactly talking about. And we'll go over to, I think he was a left end. No, actually it was right end. Now he's a 2nd round draft pick, but let's look at these first 3. He's got A, B+, and B. So you see with all of those, that's a pretty surefire way of telling you got a good pick in the draft. All right, tip number 14 is right after the draft, it's really, really important for you to look at free agency. Usually whenever you go and look at free agency, you're able to actually see some free agents, or some draft players that did not get drafted that are pretty good overall. Usually you can really find some really good fullbacks, maybe some good running backs with really, really good speed that maybe just have a low overall. So make sure at the end of the draft, you immediately go to the free agency pool. Even kickers are a really good one as well that I just thought about. And scour the free agency, usually sort by their age, and look and see if there's any rookies that have really good overalls that maybe missed out on getting drafted. There's usually always a few. Make sure to check it out. And last but not least, tip 15 is making sure to sign your best players as early as possible. Because if you develop these players throughout the course of the season and you wait to the end of the season to sign them, what they're going to be negotiating for will go up, meaning that Hassan Reddick, let's say he's at 83 overall, we're in week 2 or 3. We'll say at week 17, we developed Hassan Reddick. Now he's like at 88, 89. Well, he's going to want more money. So make sure that you sign your good players early on. And if you know of anybody that you could sign, go ahead and get them. If you know you want to get them, especially if you plan on developing them, try to go ahead and sign them. Or if you want to kind of cheese it, don't apply any points to their development until after they're signed so that you can kind of get the most bang for your buck. Let me know down in the comments below if any of that helped you. And if you have any other tips for anybody else, let me know down in the comments. I'm pretty interested to see if I have left out any big things, but this was kind of just a general overview to get you set up so that you have the best franchise gameplay possible. I'll catch everybody later. Floopy Donkey out.